7 now on Daybreak. 4 million of us have been victims of identity fraud. The average person victim to it losing over £1,000.
Most of us are aware of the risk, but research out today reveals that the majority of us are still complacent about protecting our identities. Our consumer editor, Reay-Smith, reports.
It's one of the fastest growing crimes in Britain, costing the economy billions every year. And although 95% of us are now aware of the risks of identity fraud, the number of victims is still rising as people continue to be careless with their identities. Research carried out by CFAS, the UK's fraud prevention service, has revealed that 25%, that's 1 in 4 of us, are not taking simple precautions, such as shredding bills and statements before throwing them away. Only 57% of us check the authenticity of phone calls and emails before responding. And 46% of us would not report a lost driving licence or passport straight away. And when post fails to arrive, only 41% of us would follow up our missing mail.
Phil's here now, along with JustinMcKeown, who's a victim of identity fraud. Tell us your horror story, Justin. Thanks for coming in.
My wallet was stolen. I was doing some training at a hotel in Oxfordshire, and it was stolen at 12:30. By 4:30 that afternoon, I didn't have a penny to my name. Every one of my accounts had been emptied, my wife's accounts had been emptied, and then thousands of pounds of credit card fraud had actually been...
So don't they need PIN numbers and stuff like that?
Yeah, and I was very careful with my PIN number. I'd done all the sensible things, had credit card protection, and they managed to crack my PIN within half an hour of leaving the hotel.
Well, we don't know to say how, but you can...
Yeah, well, this was interesting because I was being accused of having collaborated with them or having written down my PIN number in my wallet, which, of course, I hadn't done. And it turned out that MBNA had actually given my PIN number out to the person impersonating me. They called up, they had my mother's maiden name, which is easy to get, it's a matter of public record, and conned MBNA into handing out my PIN number.
The PIN number, I thought, was such a personal thing that isn't even allowed to happen.
I didn't know it was possible, the police didn't know it was possible, but that's why I was being accused of having collaborated with them.
It was a sophisticated con, and what's amazing about this is you lose your wallet, you think you might have lost the cash that was in it or possibly have to cancel the cards, but this has had sort of far-reaching consequences for Justin. He's still got a black mark on his credit history, he's you know, had difficulties founding a business. That's the kind of effect that these things have.
Yeah. But you got the money back, which is half the problem here. I'd suggest people aren't careful enough, then, all right, if somebody steals my identity, however much I lose, I will get it back in the end. So if you thought you're going to lose that money full stop, we'd all be a lot more careful, wouldn't we?
Well, it took about 6 weeks before I actually got all the credit card fraud cancelled and got my money back and my wife's money back. But we'd done everything that you could possibly do to be sensible. We just didn't know that people could take your PIN number and people could take your mother's maiden name. All the banks used that as a security check.
And 6 weeks of hassle, I'm sure, trying to get back to where you were.
Well, one thing I could say is that this is definitely not victimless crime. If you were in my household for that first 48 hours particularly, my wife was incredibly upset because it just kept getting worse and worse. Each way we turned, it got worse.
Dreadful, dreadful. What can people do, really? Phil, you're up against it.
Well, these are sophisticated crimes, but fortunately there are a number of simple things that you can do to try and protect yourself. And we've got some top tips here for you now. Number 1, check for unfamiliar transactions on bank statements. 4 in 5 do this already, which is good. Shred documents containing sensitive information, that's bank statements, utility bills. You have to pay those bills first before you shred them, of course. Look into mail that goes missing and redirect post for at least 6 months when moving houses, that's good practice. And finally, just limit the amount of information shared when using social networking sites. For example, you know, your date of birth, your address, and your mother's maiden name. Sometimes people can figure that out through your social networking. It's actually good advice, perhaps, to make up a maiden name when you're giving one of these security questions as an answer, because it is easy to find that kind of stuff out.
OK, Phil, thanks. And Justin, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you very much.